where you get an opportunity to pay school fees. So how do you do that? It's a simple process, really. You go to any supermarket where you'll be able to find the participating Kiwi tin with the fabulous new logo around the nation. Then you're going to buy a tin of that, and when you pop the lid, under the lid, you will find a code. You're going to take your phone, and then you're going to dial *459*5#, follow the instructions, and instantly you will win airtime or data, and instantly you will enter into the draw, for which 4 winners every week will win 35,000 shillings. And what does it do? It goes directly to paying school fees in January. It's a good thing. You should get on it now.
It is. It is. All you need to do is just go and buy Kiwi.
Yes, and then follow the instructions. Yes.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Very good. It's important to do it. Now, page 6 of the Standard this morning, there are 4 photos. Photo number 1, caption: Lailuba Market in Tigania East flooded after heavy rains. Photo number 2, Mbeu Ward Rep John Muguna on the banks of the Solent River Zanantu in Tigania West, Meru County. Photo number 3, residents of Kageraine village in Kinangop constituency assist a miner on a wheelchair cross a flooded section of the road. And the other one is motorists driving through Link Road in Mombasa after heavy rains pounded the county for the last 2 days. The story is leaders in northeastern Nyandarua call for aid as floods wreak havoc. Northeastern leaders are calling on both the government and humanitarian aid agencies to respond quickly to the devastating floods that have cost lives and livelihoods in the area. During a presser at UDM offices in Nairobi, Mandera County leaders asked the state to declare the situation a national disaster. I'd like to appeal to all non-state actors, government and other well-wishers to come to the rescue because the situation doesn't seem to be subsiding. That is UDM party leader Ali Roba. Upscale the emergency response required as county governments are not adequately resourced to deal with this catastrophe. This is a situation that's going on across the country in very many places, and this is that story and the photos. Now, let's have this conversation. We are joined by the Public Health and Emergencies Manager at the Kenya Red Cross Society, Caleb Chemirmir. Caleb, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Thank you very much for joining us at the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thank you.
I know that the Kenya Red Cross has been doing a lot. Even before the onset of the rains, went around the country, sensitizing communities on how to prepare for the oncoming rains. Now they're here. I'm sure you're on the ground. You'll tell us all about this. To welcome you to the conversation, CT has the day's proverb. This week's proverbs are from
the Republic of Congo, otherwise known as the Congo.
Okay.
Otherwise also known as Congo Brazzaville.
Okay.
Ingawaji, Brazzaville is actually the capital city and also its largest city. You know, there are countries where the capital city is not necessarily the largest city, but in this case, it is.
Okay.
Even without drum beats, banana leaves dance.
Even without drum beats, banana leaves dance. Caleb, what's your interpretation of this proverb?
That's a tricky one. Well, there are events that, with or without your interventions, they will occur. Therefore, you need to get ready for them. Yeah, that's my interpretation.
That is a beautiful interpretation. So simple and so to the point. Yes.
Upende usipende.
There are things that will happen with or without your input.
Upende usipende.
Yes.
It will happen.
Yes.
Okay. Caleb, it appears like tupende tusipende, these rains are coming. Tupende tusipende, we are seeing the effects of this. What, from a global view, are you dealing with at the Kenya Red Cross?
The context is that the phenomenon El Nino is not only affecting Kenya. There are neighboring countries, Tanzania, Somalia, Ethiopia. There are also even parts of the southern Sudan who are experiencing increased rainfall during this OND period. So we're within the context of what is happening regionally. Yes.
And so in the country, how bad is it?
The current situation is that we have over 10,000 people, households, affected so far. And directly, we're talking over 1,600 households who have been displaced. Actually, now tending towards 2,000. We'll get updates of the night. The figure will definitely be above 2,000.
So when we say displaced, what are we talking about here? I mean, it sounds like we understand that, but it's all right. When we say displaced, that they're not able to inhabit their shelter anymore, what has happened? The houses have been, washed away, they've been flooded. What has happened that they've been displaced?
So the nature of effect, let's start with the larger number of over 10,000 households who have been affected. Here we're talking about households that either do not access their routine market routes because of roads being cut off, communications lines, farmlands and all that. They might not necessarily have their households or their houses distracted. But the ones that we are talking about of close to 2,000 right now, those ones are the ones who have been displaced, meaning that where they reside, their household goods and their houses have been distracted by the increased rainfall.
So what happens that this occurs? Because, heavy rain, water falling from the sky, but what happens to cause a situation whereby now these areas become uninhabitable? What has happened? Flooding, houses have been washed away, because it's not just the rain falling from the sky. There must be something else that has contributed to this.
These communities that are affected, mainly if you look at, as read by Latif as regards the exact locations, we're talking about northeastern, we're talking about upper eastern region, we're talking about central areas, especially Meru. Some parts of Turkana, we've started receiving enhanced rainfall and some effect. So here we are talking about individuals or households that do not normally, and they're not resilient enough. So when you talk about them being displaced or their farmlands being affected or their road networks being affected, then there is a lot of livelihood impact on them that is likely to cause a slightly longer term, mid to longer term effects on their lives. Yeah.
Do I hear you to be saying that these are areas that ordinarily do not experience such rainfall?
The rainfall that is expected within this period of the OND period is enhanced within those areas. To the extent that now these displacements have started happening at slightly, we'll call them the onset period of these rains. So the question begs, what will happen during, the peak period of the rains?
Essentially, the disasters that we're now seeing is not the peak.
We are yet to get to the peak.
When is the peak expected?
I will not give the precise times as regards the peak, but the onsets began mid of October for most of the parts of the country, but some started late October to early November, and the rains within the lower areas of like areas of Tana River, Garissa, Wajir. It's not only the rain that hits or pours directly on their land, but also what rains on the upper, the highlands of central, the river Tana flowing down, and the impact of that. Kenya Red Cross, together with other partners, the water authorities and communities structures, have been monitoring these river levels just to check and to ensure that we warn communities early enough to be able to move to safer grounds in this period.
So, Caleb, there was prior warning.
Yes.
Met had said expect some above normal rainfall,
Yes.
possibly El Nino during this time. So, were these communities aware that this was going to happen? Had there been proper preparation for such kind of disasters?
A message has been shared by the weatherman over time. Meteorological department has communicated. We've had contingency planning jointly and led by government. We've had sector-specific coordination mechanisms by government and partners just to ensure that the country is prepared. So within those preparedness actions, there are things that institutions of government, agencies led by organizations like the Kenya Red Cross, and the communities are engaged in advance to the same. So this includes various modes of communication, including social media, broadcasted messages before the event or even about the event. Kenya Red Cross has supported the preparedness actions by initially sharing messages around the OND rainfall and the enhanced rainfall, the likely effect, and what communities need to do. During such period when now we anticipate maybe within a certain period in a specific location of flooding, maybe because of the monitoring of the river levels or the prediction of the rainfall upstream, then messages are sent to those particular communities in partnership with other partners like Safaricom to ensure that messages go to those particular households and they receive messages about impending flooding in those areas.
Has it had an impact? Like, can you tell us, because of this concerted effort by the various actors, we have actually been able to avert a crisis to this level?
We will not delve into, assessing the impact as of now, but it is an essential and important way of going around this. To ensure that those communities have adequate information and have choices to make as regards, their safety. Yes.
So maybe I can ask the other way around. Have the communities responded positively to the early warning messages? If you're telling people, beware that you could be affected by flooding because of the swelling of river, this and that, have we seen people moving out willingly before the floods hit?
Through the various coordination mechanisms, especially at community level, sub-county, and even county level, once the messages are broadcasted and also information shared as regards the river level and the likely rains that are likely to pound those areas, we've seen some communities heed, and that is why you will find the number of the affected a little bit higher, far much higher as compared to those who are displaced. Those who are displaced will include those who heeded early and those who were found in the mix of issues. And within the ratio of close to 1,000, you will see that there's a good response, and even by the leadership, because when you are engaging communities, you need the local leadership. Yes, and I think you read the article by the Northeastern leadership, the elected leaders, and also the county government leadership, including the regional commissioners' actions. Those are very important in ensuring that the communities heed to warning.
When we have these heavy rains, is it that these are new areas that are experiencing these heavy rains, or are they the areas that from time to time one hears of? Why I say this is because the Red Cross, and because of its functions, probably understands better than most, probably only the government agencies that are involved understand better, of areas that have been affected in the past, the ones which are being affected now. Do we see congruence? Is there something about the areas that are affected the most?
Yeah, that speaks to the contingency plan, both the multi-sector contingency plans as well as sector-specific plans. I say this because at the national level and even at the county level, we have the NDOC-led planning for the various counties. And one of the things that was undertaken during this planning is mapping, just to ensure that based on the historical data, we are able to identify which geographic locations are likely to be affected and even engage those communities in advance. So as regards the sites, as we're seeing right now, they are very close to what we had in the past. There's very little deviation as regards projected or anticipated areas that are prone to flooding based on the past.
When was the last time we had such floodings in these areas, since they're more or less the same areas? This level of flooding?
The flooding is dependent on the precipitation in those particular areas, including where the highlands that feed into those lowlands. So there are varying times.
So if we were to say, for purposes of our discussion, that it happens yearly, there are plans, they've been mapped out, but what are the physical activities that have been taken over time? Because they've seen this before, it's happened before, they know the consequences. What are these things that, one, need to have been done and to have been done?
I think we need to commend efforts also by government and agencies, including Red Cross, that have been intervened post the previous flooding in those particular areas. Look at the situation in the western part of the country. History will remind you that, at such a time we'll be talking about, serious flooding, displacement and effects, especially those around, the Yala River. And
Budalangi.
Yes, those areas. But you can see the effect to those communities when we have enhanced rainfall has been less over the period because of the interventions that have occurred. Then two, we at times get stuck on the negative bit of it. But we also don't look at what are the opportunities that arise from enhanced rainfall and flooding in those areas. So over time, there have been investments on dams and ponds in those communities, improving their livelihoods through such events, using those dams for farming and improving even access to food and things like that. The government has also supported in, the infrastructure bit. But you see, issues around the pathway that the rivers take, it does not necessarily need to take the same path the same year. Yeah, you will find that where you had, the flash flood streams, which has been dry this season, it passed through this area, and you find that it has moved maybe some 200 meters, 300, especially on the lower lands, as it exits into the oceans and things like that. So instances in Wajir, Tana River, you will find where the rivers precisely passed would not necessarily be exact position, but within the same geographic confines.
Some of the undertakings that are required to mitigate against this may be very expensive.
Yeah.
And they may be very capital intensive. But if rivers flood and overflow, can rivers be diverted? Can rivers be dredged?
Those are technical questions that will require engineering lens to those issues.
The reason why I ask
is
because I come from a place that perennially was perennially flooded. The Kano Plains. The Serikali's idea story.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, it's one river, it's called Nyando River. Okay? Now, there was a period when the flooding, but this is a story I repeat all the time because it's important. There was a period when that flooding ceased to the point of almost being non-existent. The problem simply didn't occur as it used to before. When I talk about dredging, it actually took place. When I talk about perhaps diverting it so that instead of just one pathway, it has more than one pathway, it happened. The very things you say, ponds were built or dredged, because the ponds had been in existence. They were just over time covered
by silt.
Yes, and so you'd find all manner of vegetation on it, but very little water. Meaning, what I'm asking is, there are things, and you've mentioned, that can be done even by communities. It does not require government intervention. No, not really. It may require the mechanized services in the department or the Ministry of Agriculture or roads department to help, but it's something that can be done. The question I'm really asking is, we have all these water bodies right across the country. Now, is there something in their docket that is supposed to cater? Because we're talking about water here, more water than we know what to do with. I'm asking, should they not be at the center of this particular conversation?
It is, and as I told you, there is an overall contingency plan that we're following through. Red Cross plays its role within that national plan, even the sector-specific plans, and their government agencies. And I think it would be fair to allow those government agencies that deal specifically with infrastructure to engage on the same. However, I can speak very well as regards the Red Cross related contribution towards the overall national contingency plan.
Let's take a break. It's 29 minutes past 7. Kenya's biggest conversation is hosting Caleb Chemirmir. He's a public health in emergencies manager, like the Kenya Red Cross. We're talking about the effect of the ongoing heavy rainfall across the country. Flooding has caused many people to be affected. Caleb is telling us over 10,000 households have been affected, and heading now to about 2,000 households that have been displaced as a result of these heavy rains. Okay, the conversation continues shortly. Caleb, we're talking about kiwi, and talking about kiwi and the importance of buying kiwi. Also because school fees also coming.
Yes.
Right?
So there's a way to mitigate, as there is a way to mitigate when it's flooding. There's a way to mitigate when now we're looking for school fees for January. And Kiwi says, in as much as you can step up and shine and look dapper for school, we can also step up and shine and make sure that you can have access to school fees come January. All you need to do is walk into any supermarket that is displaying Kiwi with fabulous new logo design, and you buy a tin of that. Buy a tin of that and then follow the instructions. And the number is *459 *5#. You follow the instructions and you input the code which you'll find under the lid, and instantly you win airtime or data, and then you get enrolled in the draw that could see you win 35,000 shillings. 4 people are winning 35,000 rather every week until it runs out, and people then get a chance to go to school in January. No hassle.
How do you know the Kiwi that's actually involved in this particular campaign? So this is how it looks like. And there's this starburst here, which has the instructions on what to do, right? So the starburst here, it tells you once you get it, you get instant airtime or data. It also shows you how to dial *459 *5#. And if you open under the lid, you will find the code that you need to send. So look out for this particular tin of Kiwi. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
The Club Kiboko Festival is getting better with each edition, bringing you more fun and entertainment. This November 18th, 2023, all roads will lead to the Ulinzi Sports Complex, Langata, for a fun day full of games, entertainment, competitions, and lots of giveaways. This holiday season, join us as we make new memories with friends and family. And who knows, you might even be a winner of the many prizes, including scholarships, holidays, gift hampers, and much more. What are you waiting for? Book your ticket now on ticketsasa.com for just 500 bob for kids and 300 for adults. For more information, contact Joanne on 0708 21157 or email jnyambura@standardmedia.co.ke. The Club Kiboko Festival. Miss it, miss out.
Kwani umefly?
Squeeze barabara ni nywe.
Kenya Roads Board is committed to ensure an efficient road network for a prosperous nation. Kenya Roads Board, your fuel levy at work.
Multi-story garden. Mbona umechagua hii system kupanda spinach?
Conventionally, the space this vertical garden takes ni about 4.5 feet base diameter yake. So plants ungepandia hapo chini conventionally, neza panda up to 16 plants, but with this utapanda up to 120 plants. It's very easy to manage. Juu unaona niko na nails.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So,
What is the importance of red soil?
ukimwagilia maji kama it's not red soil, inakuwa compacted. But with red soil, ukimwagilia maji
Haishikani.
haishikani.
All right,
Spice up your
busy
life.
in all parts of the city this morning. Coming off of Jogo Road, it's busy as you get towards Landis, and then there's traffic. It's coming in from my goodness, all areas, and then touching on Kamkunji at the roundabout. In the middle of the CBD, very busy. And Uhuru Highway getting into the city, very, very busy as well. On the Thika Superhighway, bumper to bumper traffic is coming all the way in from Githurai, well beyond Safari Park Hotel, in from Clay City, really, really busy, and it's moving very slowly. Ruaka Road is then giving through towards Limuru Road, coming in from Muthaiga, all the way from Kitisuru. That traffic is heavy. Red Hill Link Road, Red Hill Road, Lower Kabete, all of that coming in from Gashie, very heavy as well. James Gishoro is giving all the way from Riara Road, and it's snaking along in both directions, getting out towards Wayaki Way. It's that Monday morning, and it's a wait to see what it's going to look like, but we're getting into traffic hour hot and heavy. Let's know what's going on where you are. We want to keep things moving this morning, but it doesn't look like that for most parts, at least not for now. It's going to take a lot of patience as well as being careful, but let's talk either way on Spice FM, KE on X.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Conversation continues with Chemirmir. He is the Public Health and Emergencies Manager from the Kenya Red Cross Society. We're talking about the work that's been done to address the ongoing rainfall and the effects of that. So, Caleb, in these parts of the country, like you said, northeastern, upper eastern, they're seriously affected. What are we talking about? Are we talking about proper displacement of people? Are we talking about livestock? What are we saying?
The effects also go into the livelihood components of the populations that have either been affected or directly displaced. This would include, farmland. The infrastructure that we are talking about, like roads, have a direct or indirect effect in the various sectors. Because here you're talking about commerce, trade, movement of goods, including food, and populations. So that is interrupted. That also affects other sectors like the health services in terms of accessing the health facilities or even referrals. So when we talk about the other effects on the infrastructure, including roads, then we are talking about the whole human facets being affected. And that is why we are having a population of over 10,000 households that have been affected.
Okay. What has the government been doing? What are these preparations that you say there's a coordination framework?
Oh, yes.
All right. But the national government, county government, plus partners, Kenya Red Cross included.
Yes.
So what is it that you look at when you meet and have conversations?
Okay. If you may allow me, I'll use the health sector planning, which is a mirror of the overall national planning, as well as the other sectors.
Okay.
For the health sector, we do have a coordination mechanism that was set up way back, some 4 months ago or so, which went into the business of preparing the contingency plan for the country, for the health sector. And therefore, that means even for the other sectors, as well as the overall coordination, it feeds into it. Now, that went through a lot of inputs from various technical lenses. So the weather-related data as regards the prediction, the various technical fields in health, partners who are involved in health service provision, Red Cross included, went into the business of preparing that plan, and that plan is ready. The plan focuses on 5 main areas, which are very critical and well thought. Enhancing coordination during the preparedness, response, and even up to the recovery phase of this enhanced rainfall. Number two is to ensure that there is continuity of healthcare services. With flooding and related heavy rainfall, we have disruption of access to healthcare services. So the plans were there to critically look at ensuring that communities will continue accessing healthcare services. Number three is looking at the surveillance. From the surveillance lens of issues, diseases and nutrition status of communities, ensure that we are closely monitoring and ensuring that we do not have disease outbreaks, which we know during such periods are likely to occur.
Yeah.
Remember, we've just come from a period close to a year of acute watery diarrhea, cholera being cited in the country.
Yeah.
So this is a context that we are living in, and it's a reality. And of course, other diseases that can arise from flooding, vector-borne diseases being another critical one. The other bit is looking at logistics. How do health commodities, personnel move, including the health commodities angle of issues? Are they prepositioned? Are they in the correct locations? And Kenya Red Cross is one of those partners, together with other agencies like UNICEF and UNFPA, who have been able to support the national government to preposition these commodities, including WHO, to preposition these commodities at strategic locations. In the event that those communities mapped out will require. In the mapping for the health sector specific, allow me to mention that even the health facilities that were going to be affected were mapped out. Working closely with the county governments, identifying based on historical data and topographical issues, which facilities are likely to be affected, and therefore prepare adequately for them. Then lastly is giving a lens on advocacy, communication, risk communication, and community engagement, just to ensure that we have a very good plan, we have adequate messages during the whole phases. That is the preparedness, the response, and recovery phase. That when we'll engage communities, we'll engage them adequately, comprehensively, and ensure that we have not only buy-in from the communities, but also all other organs at community level. There are community-related organizations and structures that are necessary for working together in terms of ensuring that we minimize the effect of this flooding. Thank you.
How would you compare? So we're looking at about, give or take, about 3 to 4 weeks of rain that have happened so far, right? Yes. And already we're seeing what we've seen in terms of destruction, in terms of, people having been displaced and having to move, and then having to see the enactment of these plans and policies that have been put in place just in case. And so now we're seeing that it's a situation that it's happening. How would you compare this in terms of mitigation efforts that have been put in place and rolling them out compared to what has happened in the past, where there have been, flooding disasters such as this? So far, we also know that, we've been told, even as of this morning, that, the rains are likely to last well into the new year. How would you compare what has been done so far to previous incidents where the same has happened?
Looking at I talked about the contingency planning, and it is good to mention that it is also devolved to the extent that counties also have their own county multi-sectoral contingency plans. Now, when you look at the rollout of the contingency plans or implementation of these plans, of course there are challenges because the resources required to ensure that the plans are delivered could be massive, and we are still calling out to anyone who has the muscle to either physically support or financially support comes on board. But by and large, that we had a contingency plan that is well thought, that is in all layers, that is in all sectors, is a good thing. Is a good thing in the sense that if you want to ensure that we are able to deliver, then you just plug into it. If we are talking about the previous years, over the years we are seeing improvement in terms of how we plan. We are seeing improvements of how we coordinate, and this is a good thing. I just forgot to mention that even within the humanitarian space, we do have a coordination mechanism specifically for the humanitarian agencies, and this is led by UNH OCHA, and within the various hubs, and the country has been split into hubs, 8 hubs. We have different agencies, and Red Cross is doing the leadership in some of these hubs. So all partners are brought on board. All humanitarian actors are brought on board who are involved in the business of preparing and even responding to the enhanced rainfall.
So what you're talking about is something that is multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral.
Precisely.
And particularly the leadership is involved.
Yes.
Then when I read this story, the press conference by the leadership from Northeastern, I'm a bit confused. Because the former governor of Mandera County, who is now the senator from Mandera County, was addressing this press conference. And he's saying, I'd like to appeal to all non-state actors, government and other well-wishers to come to the rescue because the situation doesn't seem to be subsiding. They were saying this should be now declared a national disaster, upscale the emergency response required as county governments are not adequately resourced to deal with the catastrophe of this magnitude. The governor of Mandera, Mohammed Khalif, expressing fears of more deaths arising from starvation and waterborne diseases should urgent mitigation strategies fail to be put in place. And he says, it is disheartening to see local schools submerged, hindering the education of our students and the disruption of vital local institutions, including hospitals. These sound like leaders who are not aware of a coordinating mechanism, of a place at a platform where they can raise this issue, where these issues have actually been mapped out and there's a proper, clear escalation matrix.
Yeah, I would want to join, all Kenyans as well as, the media together with the leadership, to empathize with those who have been affected by the floods. And, it touches the heart and causes one to act more. But the fact of the matter is that the coordination mechanisms that came up with the various contingency plans involves all leaders, from the very local community level structures to the highest level of this country. So each and every player of the disaster management cycle has a role, and that includes even the political leadership to ensure that the issue is brought to the fore and addressed. For Kenya Red Cross, we have a duty. Maybe I didn't mention this earlier, but we are auxiliary to government. This means that during such times when there is human suffering, we are there to ensure that we support the national government. And this is through a legal provision of an act of parliament. Now, as regards if we did not have or had plans, I think that is something that I've already spoken to, as regards very clear plans that we do have and we are doing following. By the way, we will be having an aerial survey this morning over, the flooded areas of Wajir all the way up to Mandera, just to look at the situation as it is, and if necessary also do drops, aerial drops within those areas. And we will be having the national government leadership at that level, the
county commissioner
and the regional commissioners on board, as well as the county government and elected leaders where possible. This stems from MCA all the way up.
So I don't know about you, Caleb, but it sounds to me like these leaders are expecting somebody else to do the job. They're saying the national government, if these things are not done, then people are going to die. When a governor is saying it is disheartening to see local schools submerged, hindering the education of our students and the disruption of vital local institutions, including hospitals, and then Mandera South MP Abdul Haro pleading with the state to release emergency and disaster management funds to help those affected. It sounds like funds are not being released. Sounds like there's a disconnect between what these elected leaders at constituency and county level know versus what the national is doing. But you're saying that this is all coordinated and they are part of the coordination.
Latif, let's not go in that direction. I've already spoken about the coordination mechanisms that is functional.
Okay. So then let me ask you this direct question.
Yes.
They are calling on the state to declare the situation a national disaster. Okay. From where you sit, from what you see in the last couple of days, and the effects of the ongoing rainfall, the effect to the communities, should it be escalated?
I think the issue is to monitor closely the numbers and also projections. We are getting more distilled predictions as regards daily, weekly potential for rain in the various parts of the country. Working closely with community-based disaster response teams, which Red Cross has invested over the years, monitor those rivers. Just suffice to mention that some of these rivers that traditionally cause flooding have gauges through various partnerships, have gauges, and those CBDRT teams that Red Cross has invested heavily in various communities monitor the water level. So we will use those data to, speak to what is likely to happen, and through a coordinated approach that
so there's a mechanism that would advise the state to escalate this and call it a national disaster.
The state coordinates all of us. Using various scientific parameters by the data weathermen, also those who have been in the business of DM, based on their information and projections to advise next moves. So when that happens, then we'll get communication. But as regards the enhanced rainfall, we are already warned that this is likely to happen, and it has happened, the enhanced rainfall. Yeah.
Oftentimes, when things like this happen, that's when we see that there is a plan for disaster. Is there a plan, or would it make sense to have plans in place that would then be able to avert it? For example, one of the things that is done oftentimes when these heavy rains are coming is that drainages are unblocked, because they have all kinds of dirt in them. Water then is diverted, which unfortunately a natural water body will just come back to its natural course. So what about long-term mitigation? Is that ever in the plan? Because I see things like the erection of dams, for example, to take on a lot of this excess water. The path that this excess water would take, then to be able to have diversionary mechanisms where they could all then go into one outlet. Are those kinds of things in line with a version of the consequences of such things? And are those things that can be thought of, whether it's mid to long term? Because then what happens is that every time there's something, we don't have to start running helter-skelter to, move people to higher ground, or to, then now start looking for dry spaces where we can administer food and medicine and shelter. But that, because this is the main problem here, that there is large amounts of water, it's either pooled in one place or it keeps coming, and so many things happen as a result of it. Is there mid, long-term options so that we avoid this reaction every time something happens?
Yeah, I think the proactiveness starts in the planning, and we've already talked about what are contained in the contingency plan. If you would take Kenya Red Cross as a case in point, we have invested in building capacities of responders. We have invested in capacity building responders to the extent of health, shelter, and other livelihood related interventions. Number two, we have ensured that we are working closely with the county and national governments to preposition other capacities, if it is water treatment issues, kits, which are the plants that will be able to purify drinking water. Those have been propositioned in strategic places. So the investments on or proactiveness in preparing early have been there. Now, for the mid and long-term investments, we talked about Budalangi. And Budalangi is already a good example of, over the years, such investments, what it has resulted to. In the 90s, 2000, up to early 2010, thereabouts, Budalangi was known. That is standard.
It rains, it floods.
And not only that, the effect to the communities. But over time, you've seen that the investment that were made for long term have really supported those communities. Of course, over years, it will require, a revise or revision of their stabilities and things like that. But so far, so good. The same thing in terms of what Red Cross has done over the years, in terms of long term. And we hope that even the interventions that we are having in some of the enhanced rainfall areas in the lower eastern, where we are talking about communities doing planting of, short-term crops. It's not all doom. It's also the opportunities that are there. So within those frames, pretty much this is happening. But of course, we still require closer collaboration and partnership with more to ensure that the recovery plans, the mid and long term post the response, are looked into. But this is a discussion that will definitely be in detail after the recovery phase. Yes.
You deal with the Kenya Red Cross on a daily basis. The weather department, the meteorological department. When you're communicating to these communities, is KMD able to give you precise prediction of when the rain is going to come, so that people know that between this time and this time, I am now able to run to the market and get back and then prepare to move? Do you have such kind of communication that tells you the rain will start at 3 p.m. in a certain village or in a certain location?
My brother, precise and prediction. Yes.
There is an oxymoron.
Yes. So anyway, but we've seen improvement in terms of utilization of weather data. In terms of precision, there's a greater precision. And based on what we receive for either daily or weekly data, we do then communicate. During the preparedness phase, we broadcast messages to communities, especially those which had been mapped out as high risk. I mentioned the telecoms that we work with towards ensuring that individual handsets within those areas receive appropriate message. Then during such phase where now we are seeing it is imminent, it's about to happen, the second phase of messages come to play, where now we are telling them it's time to evacuate or put yourself in a safe situation, as well as other related messages.
So specifically, are you able to tell people that leave your homes by 3 p.m. Today? It is projected. So you can tell there is heavy rainfall on the upper parts of this region. There's likelihood of the floods coming, and there's likelihood of the flood arriving in this particular village by 3:30 p.m. So you tell people, please evacuate by 3:30, or do you just say evacuate your homes?
So based on our experience and utilization of weather data, as well as the gauges that I talked about. For instance, if I give you an example of the Tana River that floods the areas of Fafi, both the Garissa and the Tana River side, going all the way down to Delta over the years. So what we know is that when the river gets to a certain level, at a certain gauge reading point, the likely affected communities will be location XYZ.
Okay.
Those were done clearly during the mapping phase, the preparedness phase. Now, during such a period, we monitor such parameters, including what is indicated as potential rainfall in the upper or the highlands and the particular geographic location. So with that, we are able to communicate with the higher precision to the communities that within the next 24 hours, we expect that the rivers will have burst their banks in these particular locations, and therefore communities within those areas receive those particular messages.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us. Caleb Chemirmir is the Public Health in Emergencies Manager at the Kenya Red Cross. He's been our guest today, talking about how they are coordinating with other agencies and government in addressing the effects of the ongoing floods. Good morning, 8 a.m.